Super Rugby Round 8. The meat of the weekend is on the Saturday because we've only got the one game on the Friday. The Sunwolves and the Waratahs start us off over in Tokyo. So the Sunwolves obviously coming off a bye. Well rested, one would assume, after a pretty disappointing trip to South Africa, although they did get close to the Lions, and then they went home and just got smashed by the Chiefs. So they'll definitely be looking for some improvement. Those last, well, the Sharks and the Chiefs games especially were pretty disappointing. So definitely be looking for some improvement against the Tars. The Tars themselves, having had a good win over the Brumbies away from home in Canberra, are kind of a team on the up. So they'll be looking to capitalise on the Sunwolves' troubles and keep pushing on in the Aussie Conference. They're still behind the Rebels, but if they get this win while the Rebels are on the bye, then the Rebels will really feel them breathing down their neck. So for the Sunwolves, Matsushima, Lemeki, and Nagare are all back, which is good news for them because Matsushima is a pretty class player. Lemeki's good on the wing, and Nagare has probably looked like their best scrum half this season. Although it does mean Salmaki, who's the guy scoring all the really highlight reel style tries, he's on the bench. So yeah, a few changes. I think it's mostly positive. The bigger changes are in the back row. So Michael Leach is not available. He's injured. So Jimeno is at 8, Lapis Labuskakni is at 7, and Tokunaga is at 6. So there's not that kind of Eddie Quirk, Michael Leach combination going on, but Lapis Labuskakni is there, so that's always a good thing. For the Tars, Newsom starts on the wing for the injured Israel Folau. They got 4 weeks without him. There's some pretty testing fixtures in that 4 weeks, so we'll see how they go, but I guess at least one of the fixtures for them is against the Sunwolves, where they may have rested him anyway or given him kind of shorter minutes. Will Miller makes his starting debut on the blindside flank, so Michael Wells is at 8, and Holloway is moved to the bench. So yeah, I mean, these guys didn't play last year in 2016, 2017, but they did play in 2016. The Waratahs again in Tokyo went in and won 57-12. I mean, realistically for the Waratahs, this is a game where you have to go in and get a win and probably get a bonus point win. They need to do what the Rebels did if they're going to catch the Rebels. So, I mean, a win like the Brumbies got will kind of be the minimum, but I think realistically a bonus point win with the way the Sunwolves have been going. For the Sunwolves, it's just another roll of the dice, man. Like, we keep saying that they're probably going to get a win eventually. It may not be until they play the Blues at this rate, but every time they roll the dice, there's a chance that the other team will not do the business and that they will be able to kind of get things clicking. Although they've been getting some big scores put on them, they've also showed threat at some time. So, yeah. Is this week their week? Probably not. The bookies have got the Tars winning by 16 points. So, yeah, I really think bonus point win is probably on the cards here. In the next game, the Chiefs take on the Blues. The Blues are not in the greatest of their form, so their season has kind of been a roller coaster, which has mostly been going down. It did have one spike up with that win over the Lions, but for the most part, yeah, she's not really been going great. For the Chiefs, they're in really good form. Since that first loss in the opening round against the Crusaders away, they've got 4 wins in a row, so they're at 4 wins, 1 loss. Blues at the opposite, 1 win, 4 losses. So, yeah, 2 teams at really opposite ends of the spectrum, opposite ends of form. So, yeah. For the Chiefs, Lachlan Boshier, he continues his strong start to the season. He gets rewarded with a start on the blind side, which means Liam Meesham's on the bench. Brad Weber's out with injury, as if the Chiefs didn't have enough injuries. So Tuhuri Orangi starts at 9. Charlie Ngata is still on the bench. I guess they're kind of easing him back into things. And plus, they've been playing all right without him, so there's no reason to disrupt a winning formula. For the Blues, Ofa Tu'ungafasi is back. Matt Duffy looks to be back. He's kind of bracketed in. Rico Ioane is back to 13 instead of being at 12. George Moala's on the wing. Kara Pryor replaces Is it Kara or Dan? I always get those two guys mixed up. Pryor replaces Taramai. So Tanu Munga must have been reading the comments on this YouTube channel because there's been a few people saying that Taramai needs to go. So yep. And Dalton Papali'i is on the bench. So good to him. Good for him to be back. He played in the 7s. He looked alright. Not the 7s, the 10s. He looked alright. He looks like a promising kind of prospect style player, but has not been able to play yet this season. So we'll see if he gets any time. In terms of the New Zealand Conference, the Chiefs are only 2 points behind the Crusaders and the Hurricanes, so they really can't afford to drop any points, especially at home, and especially against a team with a 1-win and 4-loss record. They need to win. If they get a bonus point, then they'll be in kind of happy town, but even though the Blues barely qualify as a New Zealand team these days, they're still a New Zealand team, so I think getting a bonus point would be kind of a luxury rather than a minimum expectation. The Blues haven't beaten the Chiefs in the last 13 attempts. I checked the dates. It's back when people were still using iPhone 4s. iPhone 5 hadn't come out. Yep. So yeah, I wouldn't be back in the Blues, but you never know. I mean, they're such a crazy team that when they're picked to win comfortably, they get smashed, and when they're picked to get smashed, sometimes they do it. But I still think that overriding rule of the Blues can't beat New Zealand teams is going to apply here. The bookies have got the Chiefs by 8 points. Yeah, you really never know, but hopefully for the Blues it'll be an improvement on last week. Third game of the round is an all-Aussie affair. So we've got the Brumbies playing the Reds over in Canberra. The Brumbies are coming off a pretty disappointing home loss to the Waratahs last week. Can't afford to lose those home games, but they managed to drop points, and it was to a conference rival. So really their season's starting to look kind of on the ropes at this point. And they were disappointing the last time they played the Reds as well. That was over in Brisbane. So they definitely need to pick up their game this coming round. For the Reds, I mean, they've really been exceeding expectations. I don't think anyone expected them to get anywhere. They're still in the positive with a 3-win, 2-loss record, whereas the Brumbies are the opposite. You'll notice all these games, totally opposite records. It's kind of an amazing little thing. But yeah, I don't think anyone would have picked the Reds to be in positive territory at this point of the season. They're coming off a bye, so it's a pretty well-earned rest for them, having gone from kind of Argentina, Brazil, London, eventually over to Cape Town, and then back to Australia. So they had a bye to kind of recover, really timely, and we'll see how revved up they are for this game. For the Brumbies, Henry Spate is out, so he's one of their kind of, even though he didn't have his best game against the Waratahs, this season he still looked like he's got a bit of attacking threat that maybe some areas they've not had. Like, they've not been the sharpest team anyway. So yeah, his knee is bothering him. So Dargaville's in for him, and Verity might get his debut if he gets some time, if he comes off the bench anyway. Lucas replaces Powell for the number 9. Jersey, and Chance Penny is also playing. So it's a decent looking Brumbies team. For the Reds, so Higgins is back at 8. Timu has to move over to 6. They've got an 18-year-old who I've not heard of, Jordan Petaya, on the bench. So that means that Duncan Paiawa drops out of the squad altogether. He's been struggling to get minutes this season. I remember there was one game where he was on the bench, didn't get on. So he was kind of a breakthrough player last season, but he's not been in the good books with Brad Thorne for some reason this season. So I don't know what's going on there, but we'll see how this 18-year-old guy goes once he gets on, if he gets on. For the Brumbies, I mean, you really need to beat another Australian team. They have not beaten an Australian team yet this season. That needs to start now, and at home there's no excuse. So they need a win. For the Reds, I mean, I'm just interested to see if they can kind of keep this up. They've been on a decent run. They've not been blowing teams away, but they've looked to kind of control and strangle teams. So we'll see if they can kind of do that same disruptive game they had against the Brumbies last time. But yeah, it'll be different away from home. The bookies have got the Brumbies by 4. So picked to be a pretty tight one. Fourth game of the round, so it's kind of, we've got 3 derbies in a row, and then we've got our non-traditional teams at the top and bottom. So in a pretty big game in the South African Conference, the Lions, who are 4 from 3, well, 4 wins, 3 losses, against the Stormers, who are 3 wins, 4 losses, again with that opposites thing. It's really a battle of the 2 teams who are probably tired because neither of them have had a bye yet. They've been playing since week 1 when only 2 games happened. So pretty much 2 months solid of Super Rugby with a fair bit of travel lumped on there for the Stormers. The Lions yet to tour. Well, they did have a trip to Argentina, but still not the proper kind of tour of Australia and New Zealand. So the Lions, that one loss away from having a pretty poor 50-50 record, which they don't want, but the Stormers equally 1 win away from bringing things even. So yeah, it's a really interesting battle between these kind of 2 teams. The Lions are still comfortably ahead in the South African Conference. So I think it's a 7-point buffer they have. But I mean, if you keep losing games, it's going to quickly evaporate, especially at home. So for the Lions, Ruan Combrink is back. That's really good news because they've talked up his right boot. Apparently most of the guys in the Lions teams are all lefties, like Elton Jantjies and Andreas Coetzee, so they're lefties. They need a guy with a big right boot, and Ruan Combrink will certainly provide that. So he relegates Mahuza to the bench. Marvin Ori starts in the second row as Adrianza is out. For the Stormers, Vermaak is back at 9, which is good news. Du Toit's in the back row for this game. They've got a bunch of players who are kind of looking at coming back, but not quite ready yet. They got the bye next week, so possibly the game after we'll start to see kind of what should be the Stormers, not full strength team, but at least more what a full strength team would look like. So yeah, should be a bit of a ding-dong battle, this one. If the Lions win, it definitely shows them still being kind of a cut above the other South African teams. But if they lose, then it is all on, because the Stormers will be right caught up, well, not that far behind, and the Sharks, depending on how they go tonight against the Hurricanes, may or may not be in that conversation. But yeah, it's definitely all up for grabs if the Lions lose this one. The bookies have got Lions by 7. So again, they're picking them kind of comfortably, but not in that bonus point territory. And the final game of the round sees the Jaguares take on the Crusaders. So the Jaguares are still firmly rooted to the bottom of the South African Conference, with the Bulls picking up a win last week. The Crusaders are kind of, I think they're in second, but it's only based on points difference because they've got the same points as the Hurricanes, who are in first of the New Zealand Conference. So 2 teams at very different points of their season. Although the Crusaders have played 1 more game than those other New Zealand teams, so they really need to keep on winning, because between at least the top 3 at the minute, plus the Highlanders aren't far away, it's looking pretty tight in that New Zealand Conference. The Jaguares, having come off a pretty good win in their last game, are unchanged, absolutely unchanged. So that's kind of surprising to no one, that if you manage to get a win over a pretty strong Lions team, then why not keep things the same? For the Crusaders, man, they've been forced into some changes. So no Wyatt Crockett, no Jordan Taufua, no Goodhue, no Jaeger, and no Scott Barrett, because they're resting him, because All Blacks are required to have, I think, 2 games rest this season, so he's having a rest. Although Romano's coming in, he's no slouch. Bedwell Curtis moves to 8, Tom Sanders moves to 6, Tim Bateman's at 13, and Mataele, having a good game last week, starts ahead of his uncle, Tamani Valu, on the right wing. So yeah, it's kind of total contrasts, especially when you consider the Jaguares had a bye last week. They haven't travelled, so unchanged team, well rested, at home, on good form, I guess, having had a win against the Crusaders team, who's kind of disrupted by a lot of guys coming in and out. Travel from New Zealand to South Africa to Argentina. Well, they did have a win, so they've both got that in common. So you'd think that maybe the bookies are thinking this one's going to be close-ish, but they've got the Crusaders by 15. So they're still saying the Crusaders are going to do this pretty comfortably. I guess the 2 teams' opposite records kind of speaks for that. If the Jaguares can win it, then they give themselves, well, two big scalps, especially in the Lions and the Crusaders, for last year's finalists. But they might start putting themselves back in that conversation in South African Conference. They're still not there yet. For the Crusaders, yeah, like I said, they're on the same points as the Hurricanes and 2 points ahead of the Chiefs with an extra game played. They need a win, preferably bonus point, but a win away from home without question is absolutely necessary here. So yeah, it's going to be a pretty big Saturday, quite a few games, 3 derbies, and like I said, the 2 non-traditional games in there as well. So I think I'll be able to see them all except this one, which is disappointing, but 3:15 in the morning is not going to be conducive to watching this one and this one as well. So yeah, have to watch highlights of the Lions Stormers, but should be able to see everything else live. So looking forward to that. How about you guys? Which games are you looking forward to? Which is the upset of the round you're picking? Sunwolves to get first win. Blues to break their drought against Chiefs. 13-game drought. Stormers to get first away win. Jaguares to beat Crusaders would be an upset. This one, I'm not sure if either team wins, it'll be a big upset. If the Reds won, it's not going to be a massive upset. But there's definitely potential upsets everywhere else on the cards. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys again another time.